In the woods, week 2, we said the word woods is representation of life. Life out there. I don't want to get too fancy with the title and the series and all that, but if you've ever been in the woods, you know it can get one wrong decision and you can be lost forever. Psalm 4 comes after Psalm 3. We looked at Psalm 3 last week. Psalm 3 was a psalm written out of a moment of darkness in David's life. Absalom, his son, was set out, to kill him. David, his father. And he had all the men of Israel on his side, outside of the mighty men and David's faithful followers. And there was a war that was going to break out. The problem was, on one side was the nation of Israel, the nation David was king over. And the other side, and his son was leading that rebellion, and the other side was David, his life, and his mighty men. It put him in quite the predicament. My assumption was Psalm 3 was written between the gates at Jerusalem. As you go back to 2 Samuel and read the story where David comes to the point of not being able to do anything. Joab tells him, you need to stay behind. Your life is worth more than 10,000 men. And David said, you tell me what to do. I'll do whatever you tell me. And he stays behind, and he's there at the gates of what I assume to be Jerusalem, as a battle is fought on his behalf. But this battle, it's tied to Bathsheba. This battle is a result of David's failure. As David sleeping with a woman, killing the husband, he basically broke all 10 commandments. Psalm 4, though, it's speculation, but many believe that this is also a psalm written out of the same environment, circumstance. If you read Psalm 4, it appears that David he's emerged out of the distress. If I had to take a guess, I've got a feeling Psalm 4 comes just shortly after David deals with his grief of his son Absalom's death, and he reflects back, but the storm is still there. It's still bothering him. Let's read Psalm 4. To the choir master, with stringed instruments, a psalm of David. Verse 1, answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. O men, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? Selah. But you know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts on your beds and be silent. Selah. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, who will show us some good? Lift up the light of your face upon us, O Lord. You have put more joy in my heart than they have when their grain and wine abound. In peace I will both lie down and sleep. For you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. Father, I'm fully convinced of what David just penned right there, that you and you alone, you make us dwell in safety. Father, in this room this morning are broken wells, cracked wells, whatever we may want to call them. The spring of life flows into it, and the water subsides. And the spring of life continues flowing, but yet the well of life just seems to not be able to hold on to what we hear about you, what we hear about ourselves. And so we arrive back at the river of life, thirsty for righteousness, hungry for the truth, to get our eyes off the things seen, the things that are here today and gone tomorrow, to put them on the things that are unseen, the things that are of you. Father, I lift up the teens in this room to you this morning. The things we talk about today, we've got to dive real deep to understand rest. Father, you know their stories, you know their situations, you know their life. You held them in the palm of your hand before they were ever formed. You loved them. You set them aside for your purpose. And they enter into a stage of life where they will be fed from all areas. And they're hungry to know truth, Father. They're hungry to know what is real and what isn't. Give them discerning spirits to know you and to know what isn't you. May they understand this morning what it is that we are about to lay out that comes from your word. Father, we need you to speak to us. They don't need to hear it from me. They need to hear it from you. There's one, I don't want to call it a complaint, because I know it's not that. I'm going to just keep doing this, just so that microphone doesn't edge back up. So, there's one resounding wave of frustration that I hear all the time that flows through this church family. And I know you're not complaining, and I'm not heaping a burden on you, and I mean, rightly so. You know, talk away to me, to your leaders, but it's just exhaustion, I guess is the way you could say it. Just rest for the weary isn't coming. It doesn't come. It's one thing after another. I mean, like I said earlier, the economy has shifted, which has caused one burden. Finances, I mean, I look at an engine repair or a transmission repair this week, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. I mean, finances can cause you to just stay stirred. Health, some of you can't walk through life without hurting. And it just keeps you stirred. Your spirit stays stirred. You're angry about something. Something's just not right in a relationship. It keeps you stirred. You long for your sons and your daughters. You desire for them to be loved on. And they're not receiving it. It stirs you. Something's just not right at work. And it keeps you in a state of unrest. And so what do? We take vacations. And I understand the need to get away. I do. I'm going to get away for a couple days next week. And I'll be here Sunday, but I'm going to get my wife's 30th birthday. Me and Anna have been planning something special for her, so we're going to get away. But vacations can be a smokescreen. Chasing your tail. It's a lot of work to go on vacation. Keeps you stirred. But many believe their rest comes when they can get away. And they come back. And you realize, why am I still tired? For some, you're more tired than not when you come back from vacation. And the pursuit of a vacation to find rest, guys, is a dog chasing a tail. Like a Rottweiler chasing his tail that doesn't exist. He will never catch it. Rest, it just can't be found in this world. You have to begin to get outside of the mindset of rest as in the body will be, it's okay. You're breaking down. Each and every day, the body gets a little older. The body feels it. I'm going to read to you something. I emailed this to someone this week, and I understand that by the time I'm done reading it, you may have the opinion that your pastor is the most arrogant, prideful man alive. And with that said, I'm going to read this. But this is a reflection of my life, which I believe is a reflection of some, if not all of yours. So I start off by my disclaimer. Give me 2 minutes of foolishness to get to my point. And no, I am not complaining. I am drawing a distinction. What a long, exhausting week. You know what I want to do in life? Dedicate myself to the ministry of the gospel. I want to get off the mower and stop the back-breaking work and enjoy the work of God. I don't want to come home sunburned with knots in my head from running into branches I don't see. I want to chuck my business phone and my personal phone into the shallow, stagnant depths of the Indian River Lagoon to never hear them ring again. I want to never worry again about engines and transmissions that are unpredictable. I want ... But what I want is not what I am. I am a man God has called to go back and forth on a mower thousands of times a week. I am a man who is drawn to risk, high risk for the sake of others, even when I want to resist that risk to protect my own high end. I am a man compelled by love to make sure I do not stand in the way of the gospel. Thus, I am a man who longs to see Jesus in all and hear Jesus through all and hope for Jesus in all things. I am Greg. Though worn out and tired, I am who I am. What I want is not always what I am. I've come to a point about a year ago realizing that it was a fruitless endeavor to try to change my path in life. I still try. I have desires for my life. I would like to be out of debt by the time I'm 40. I'd like to be full-time here, sooner than later. I would like, and I'm sure you have many desires for your life. In Proverbs 16, the plans of a man belong to his heart, but the Lord directs his steps. And the Lord shifted me in a direction to see that it's not this that guides me. It's my feet. And yet, it's my feet. I thought Rob gave up. It's my feet are talked a lot about in the Bible. About what guides them. And it's not me. And I do a lot better understanding I am who I am, and you are who you are. And we get to David. Here's David, a man who could not sleep. I'm gonna speculate here. If you're a healthy person, do you walk around bragging about your health? It's actually something that's in the subconscious. You're healthy. You're not really aware of it because you're always healthy. But a person who is always sick and has a moment of healthiness becomes very aware of their moment of healthiness. Oftentimes attributes, praise to God for granting them a season of healthiness. David talks a lot about sleep. In verse 8, in peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. In Psalm 3, we looked at last week, I lay down and slept, I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. I predict he was a man who couldn't sleep. And probably rightly so. I mean, last week we saw Amnon, his son was killed. Tamar, his daughter was raped. And Absalom, his son, was killed. And the nation he should be leading is out to kill him. Keep me up at night. My mind keeps me up at night. It just goes and goes and goes and goes. Oftentimes beyond my control. But David knew something. But to understand David, you cannot just go back to 2 Samuel or go back to Genesis. You got to understand why you can't find rest. Not in this body, all right? Not in your My Pillow or your Ashley mattress with 3 layers of egg crate, praying to God that helps. DAC said at 69, praying to God that the blood flow slows down and thickens, and maybe that will knock you out. ZQL helps. But that is only good until the body gets used to it. But Genesis 2, listen to this. Here, I'm just going to warn you. You're going to go down a road that you've never heard before. It's not my endeavor to bring new things to you for the sake of new things. It's my endeavor to restore to you what has been taken from you. And to know what has been taken from you, you've got a couple chapters you can go to and look at. Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, things are perfect. And shortly after the resurrection, Jesus is in a form of pure divinity with humanity wrapped around him. And there's a few places you can peek in the Scripture and get a good idea of what you're becoming and what you are. Genesis 2. Listen to this. Young, old alike. Let's go deep. Because the reason you can't find rest is not found in the fact that you can't get a vacation. Your well has sprung a leak, and it's not holding water. The water of life is escaping as quick as it's going in. Thus the heavens and the earth, Moses writes, after Genesis 2, the heavens and the earth were finished. Okay? Finished. God's work was done. Hebrews 4 says he finished, he wrapped up his work at the laying of the foundation of the world. It's done. Finished. It is finished. And all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it, God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. And that's what we have on the Sabbath, that we would call the Sabbath. But now in Exodus, we have a law that is written. I believe it is the fourth commandment on the Sabbath. 6 days, let me summarize. 6 days you shall work, and the seventh you shall rest. Adam was created on the sixth day. He awakes to his first full day as being a day of rest. This is the eternal state that he was designed to live in. The eternal seventh day. Day 1 through 6 was never meant to come for Adam. He was not designed to work. It was after the fall that he would toil in the ground. It was after the fall that you ladies would give birth through the pains of labor. It was after the fall that there came a distinction between the seventh day and the first through sixth day. God blessed the seventh day, which Adam awoke to, his first full day, which was his eternal state of being, rest. God, who is outside of time, would walk in that garden with Adam, and Adam would not be commanded to work, but he would be commanded to have authority over the earth, to reign over that garden, to cultivate it, to multiply. But would this be work to Adam? No, this was his life. Adam was not commanded to take a rest on the seventh day. Adam's life, his purpose, was a state of rest. You begin to understand Mark when Jesus says about the Sabbath that it was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. That the seventh day was made for Adam, not Adam to be regulated by it. But the distinction of work came very clear at the fall. Adam, now you will begin to work. And now we will begin to box in work in 6 days. And you will enjoy the day of rest as you worship and reconnect and recharge with life. And you'll go back out to work. We're going to come back to this idea. And I understand it is a foreign idea to many, but we will hit it again because I believe it's very important to understand that leak in your well that should be holding the water, the river of life. And over and over and over again, you feel empty and depleted. So David starts off, answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. So his prayer, his psalm is oriented towards God. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. I will oftentimes, I start my day at 4:30 in the morning. And I realize then God doesn't wake up till 5. And so I may adjust that. But 4:30, I get going and I don't want to. Okay? I don't want to. But I do. Because I get a moment of time to myself in the morning to reflect on Sunday and to study and to work through the Word. And then I'll get out and we'll do some mowing and whatnot, and who knows what will come in the day. And if it's a rough day, I call my mom on the way home because I know she will answer. That's why I call her, because she's answered in the past over and over again. But sometimes she doesn't because she's eating her spaghetti dinner. But I know she will call me as soon as she has a moment. It's good enough for me. And then she will call back, or we get on the phone, and I'll come undone. And for 15 minutes, you wouldn't want to see what comes out, hear what comes out of my mouth. It's not pastoral. And I can do this with my mom and just come undone and just be bare and vulnerable because I know what she will say. And it won't be, you shouldn't say those 4-letter words, son. She just lets me be. And whatever it is for the day. And at the end of it, she'll usually sum it up like this. Which is ironic, I call her and I know what I will get from her. Greg, you're tired. And you're probably hungry. It's okay. Just go get some rest. And then I'll come undone again because there's that, I don't know, the moment someone asks, are you okay? You just totally come unglued and she'll let me come unglued and then you're tired. It's okay. That's my mom. You moms. Incredible. The gift God has given you to nurture your sons and your daughters. To let them come unglued in the safety of your presence, in the safety of your words. And just 1 or 2 sentences that begin to reorient your children back to what is real. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. David's not saying, you got to answer me. If you don't answer me, I'm pleading to you because you're not answering me. David's not moving God to answer. He's being real. It's a tough time right now, God. I need you to answer me. He says right there, you've given me relief when I was in distress. He reflects back on the day that God did answer. And this is something you should do. Put in the memory those moments that you knew without a shadow of a doubt that God worked in your life. Don't ever forget them. Scrapbook them. Guys, scrapbook them. Because these are the memories that will begin to be the foundation of your everlasting trust in the Lord. David knows that God is listening. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. Then, verse 1, O God of my righteousness. I almost blew right over this. David says he's righteous. He is righteous. That's my righteousness. But you're the God of my righteousness. David pleads to God by saying, God, I am just like you. You have to answer me because me and you, we are united. To not answer me is to not answer yourself. Paul stole this, 2 Corinthians 5:21. I don't think Paul came up with this stuff on his own. Paul knew the Old Testament. For our sake, he made him, Jesus Christ, to be sin. This is not a metaphor. It's not an illustration. It's not a far-fetched story. It's not a picture of what happened. This is what happened. Jesus Christ became sin who knew no sin. Let's flip this around real quick. For my sake, he made me to be without sin, who used to be with sin. Which is what he says, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Start plugging that leak. Because I'll tell you something, if you walk around and you don't know that, your well will go dry all the time. You will be hungry and thirsty for righteousness. You are right. You are righteousness. I know it's a big word, but you have been made right because of God's nature in you. It is your new life. But for you to be made right, we read this in 2 Samuel several weeks ago, he had to commit your iniquity, your sin, so you can commit his righteousness and be his righteousness. But I've got a feeling that you're very aware of your sin, of your unrighteousness, maybe more so than your righteousness. And that's not a good thing. Because the unrighteousness that is found in the flesh, the sin that is found in the flesh, has been dealt with. The shift has got to happen. The shift needs to happen within you. The renewal of your mind that you are no longer what you used to be. The new self has got to be clothed on you every day. And for some of you, it needs to become a verbal exercise. I am right. I am right. I am right. But don't throw 1 John 1:9 at me. All right? That if I say I have no sin, I'm a liar. Because that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's time to move on. There is a method to deal with that sin. Confess it, embrace the forgiveness, which tells me and tells you, you are right. You are the righteousness of God. And David knew it. Because God was not constrained by time. Jesus hasn't come according to our calendar, but he finished his work. It was wrapped up. David claimed the righteousness of God because he was the righteousness of God. Verse 2, O men, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? So he turns the conversation to men. It appears he's being king-like again. It seems like he's commanding his enemies. It seems like they're under his rule. This is where I think he's written the psalm after the restoration of Jerusalem underneath his authority. How long shall my honor be turned into shame? Maybe forever, guys. Maybe until the day the glory within you is revealed. Can you live with it? He doesn't say this to God. He says it to the men. He reminds himself right before he gets to this who he really is. But in front of these men, he's telling them, look, how long will you love vain words and seek after lies? You want to turn my honor into shame? Good luck. It's empty. Your words have no power. Toss them at me. Go ahead. I know who I am. That's not what you're saying. My honor is still there. You want to turn into shame? Go for it. This body will die one day. And you lose. He says this to the men. But know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. He says this to the men. The Lord hears when I call. Verse 1, answer me, God. He says to the men of the world, but he hears me. You're seeing, I think you're seeing David in his secret place and David in his public place. There's no difference. The man is using different words, but he's living by truth in front of his enemies. Those people who want to tear him down have no stand in his life. He reminds himself every day of who he is. Godly. The Lord has set me apart. He saw my unformed substance. And he loved it. And he designed me and he knitted me together. And he put himself in my DNA. You guys, you're much more special than you think. Much more valuable than you'll ever know. Patch this leak. The leak that comes from the men of the world that are tossing empty words at you. The leak that is coming from the old self, the one that was before you were born again, came to the awareness of your righteousness that reminds you that you're not right. Verse 4. This is fantastic. Be angry and do not sin. I mean, I've heard a lot of sermons on how not to be angry. And in the presence of David, presence of my mom, in the presence of God, I can be angry. It's a lot of work not to be angry. But when you know you're being loved on, it's hard to be angry. But sometimes you just have to, let me rephrase that, all the time you just need to take your hands off. Be angry and do not sin. Do not sin. Keep your mind in the right place. Keep it in worship. Let the flesh man do his thing. Let him be angry. Let him sizzle out. Let him, it's okay. But do not let the sun go down on your anger. What does that mean? How many times have I endeavored to get rid of my anger before that sun came down? And it didn't work. You could think about that. It's probably more there than fighting the clock, the sun. Be angry, do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts, on your beds. I mean, I know several of you, you just can't sleep. You just lay there. And your heart, your mind just stirs. And you'll tell someone, like, well, you shouldn't be anxious. You should trust in the Lord. Cast all your cares upon Him, and you should be able to sleep. Well, see, there's a level of truth in that. I mean, that's good advice, except for the person who doesn't have the ability to calm himself down. So, okay, ponder in your hearts. Just let it stir. But be silent. Do you see the tension that David's building? Be angry, do not sin. Almost seems impossible. But to David, if he understands, he's kind of got two spirits in him. Ponder in your hearts, but be silent. Selah. Be still. And know I am God. Too much focus, especially in front of people like you on stages like the one I sit on, have been on how to subdue the angry man and how to quiet the pondering heart. Now I'm telling you something. Trusting in yourself might work for that night, but there will come another night, and another night, and another night. The best thing to do is hands off and trust in the Lord with all your might. But He's not done. Verse 5. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. Psalm 51. What is a right sacrifice? Psalm 51. Let's read the psalm that bubbled out of David's adulterous moment. For you will not, verse 16, delight in sacrifice, or I would give it. In other words, I can't atone for my sin with slaughtering a bull or a cow. You will not be pleased with a burnt offering. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. Oh God, you will not despise. Oh man. It seems like the first step in patching the well is just watching the well leak out. God, I'm broken. I can't hold the water and I can't do it. I just can't. He brings in Zion, do good to Zion in your good pleasure. Build up the walls of Jerusalem. then will you delight in right sacrifices. I'll tell you, a lot of people, including yourself, you may attempt to patch that hole in that well by doing things that are pleasing to God, becoming religious, offering sacrifices of whatever nature. Maybe I should read my Bible more. Maybe I should pray more. Maybe I should teach my kids more about God. Maybe I should go to church more. Maybe I should toss some more money in the box in the back of the room. Maybe I should, and maybe then God will. It's backwards. Absolutely backwards. You got to know who you are. And in faith, you can go about your day, offering to God what you like. But if you think that your duties and your behavior before God, that changing what you're doing is going to patch that well, you're still missing it. You're still missing it. You're still, if anything, you're making this crack bigger. You will never find rest. Then will you delight in right sacrifices, and burnt offerings and whole burnt offerings. Then bulls will be offered on your altar. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, who will show us some good? Lift up the light of your face upon us, O Lord. I'm looking at good right now. Here you are. The veil has been removed. I'm looking at the home, the house of God. I see Jesus. Who will show you some good? Just wander over to the mirror as you're telling yourself, I am the righteousness of God. Verse 7, you have put more joy in my heart than they when their grain and wine abound. You know something, it's hard to be joyful and exhausted. In fact, all the fruits of the Spirit seem to flourish out of a soil of rest. Gentleness, patience, goodness, kindness. Hey, the works of the flesh will keep a person at a state of unrest. Hatred, bitterness, sexual immorality. Go to Galatians 5 and just compare the two. And ask yourself, which person is a person at rest? In peace, he says, looking ahead at his future, I will both lie down and sleep. Look at me. That needs to be for you. You need to walk out of here knowing that with everything you are. If you are weary and heavy laden, for whatever reason, whatever brought it on, it was no fault of your own. You were born into a state of weariness. He will. He will. For you alone, you got to get this part, oh Lord, you alone make me dwell in safety. The person at rest is the one who knows he has no control, but he's still okay. That someone bigger, greater, mightier than him has wrapped him up in his arms, in her arms, and is holding him, holding her, protecting her. He will give you rest. He will give you, hold on, we're not talking Zequel. We're not talking an 8 hours night of sleep. Some of you may never get that again. But that's not the rest you want. Sometimes what you want isn't always what you are. The rest you want is already inside of you. And the reason I'm having a hard time connecting to it, finding it, being aware of it, is because the old man is chasing after a rest that he will never get. I want to read something to you. Something that, as I was going back and forth on my mower this week, just stirring in my heart. So I wrote this down, and sometimes it's just better to read than to just summarize. The dawn of the seventh day. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath? What was the need to create the seventh day? The work was complete. Why not just set it down and move on? Why create a seventh day? One reason. You. Adam needed a day to live in. And God did not want that day to be a day that was labeled as work. For God finished the work, and therefore Adam awoke, and there was a day 7. The day that was blessed, the day God lived in for eternity to come. The day Adam was designed to live in. The day you were designed to live in. The day you must strive to re-enter. You were never meant to leave day 7. That was the day God blessed. That was the day God entered into. Only after the fall is the 7th day made distinct from day 1 through 6, and a day to be repeated. The work of God was completed at laying out the foundations of the world. When God entered into rest, He entered into it for eternity. Eternity with His children, the ones in the garden. But His children hardened their hearts towards Him. And thus they triggered an 8th day. A day which started the cycle of repetition, a day which started insanity. 6 days you shall work, the 7th day you shall rest. Then came day 8, that is day 1 again. The 6 days were never meant to be work in and of themselves. They were meant to be our purpose, our fulfillment. They were meant to be life. Yet, through an unbelieving spirit, they became repetitive. That is, until you could see the truth. The truth that is outside of time itself, that the Lord is rest. Yet many seem entangled, trapped, chained to day 1. It follows us like the shadow from the dark alley, never really showing its ugly face, yet telling you all the time that it is there and something is not right with it. You long for day 7 to come back. You long to live in day 7, the Sabbath, the rest. Even though Yeshua says to come to Him if you are heavy laden, if you are burdened to come to rest, many do not come, and they harden their minds. Even though He says we will run and not be weary, walk and not faint, I say to the faint-hearted, why don't you believe? Even though He says the Sabbath was made for you, why, in your unbelief, do you feel as if the Sabbath regulates you? Well, because day 1 came back into existence. We were not designed to return to it over and over again. Day 1 will get the better of you, it will get the better of me. There are only so many day 1s left to be lived out before we are cast headlong into the eternal day 7, the dwelling place of the Most High, which incredibly, to the one who believes, that person is already there. He lives, he dwells, and he stays put in the refuge of the Sabbath, the 7th day, Yahweh, who is life, who is His life. Do not harden your hearts, as many have done before us, and many will do beginning day 1 tomorrow. Today, believe what you have heard, and so live in the eternity of the Spirit who dwells inside of you. You are life. You are truth. You are righteousness. You are rest. You are who you are, and I am who I am. Heavenly Father, I lift this family up to you. It is a truth not to be beheld with our eyes, but to be seen with faith. There is rest for the weary this morning, but there is nothing we can do in this world to stir it. But we can believe. We can believe who we are. We can believe what we've become. We can believe in you. And Father, look, I'm a sinful man. And I confess it to you. I say things and do things and think things that I never want to do. But I know in order to continue in that rest, I just need to let it go. There you have it, Father. And I know in return you've immediately put it away and granted me forgiveness. And Father, that's my prayer on behalf of this church. May we know that you've put it away for good. Therefore, as the Holy Spirit says, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. On the day of testing in the wilderness, where your father put me to the test and saw my works for 40 years. Therefore I was provoked with that generation and said, they always go astray in their heart. They have not known my ways. As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Take care, brothers and sisters, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. But exhort one another every day, as long as it is called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we have come to share in Christ, if indeed we hold our original confidence firm to the end. As it is said, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. For who were those who heard and yet rebelled? Was it not all those who left Egypt by Moses? And with whom was he provoked for 40 years? Was it not those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the woods? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest, but to those who were disobedient? So we see that they were unable to enter because of unbelief. Therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear lest any of us should seem to have failed to reach it. For good news came to us just as to them, but the message they heard did not benefit them because they were not united by faith with those who listened. For we who have believed entered that rest. As he has said, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, although his works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he has somewhere spoken of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And again in this passage he said, they shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly received the good news failed to enter because of disobedience. Again he appoints a certain day, today, saying through David so long afterward, in the words already quoted, today, once again, if you hear my voice, do not harden your hearts. Do not harden your hearts. 4 times. 4 times in Hebrews 3 and 4, do not harden your hearts. Strive to enter this rest. And to labor to enter means you must believe the things you hear and the things that are unseen. Do not harden your hearts. So then there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God did from his. Let us therefore strive to enter that rest, so that no one may fall by the same sort of disobedience. For the word of God, do not harden your hearts, because the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and spirit. We need to separate the soul from the spirit. The spirit is at rest, the soul is at work. The joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and the intentions of the heart. It's time to pry the old man off the new man. It's time to live and rest. And no creature is hidden from his sight, but all are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give an account. Verse 14, chapter 4 of Hebrews. Since then, we have a great high priest who passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let you then with confidence, because you have not hardened your heart, with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace, and let me add in some extra words, and find rest in your time of need.